The day of my parents' 40th wedding anniversary was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it turned into an ambush. My brother Nathan clinked his glass, flashed his polished smile, and said, "It's time for a new chapter." Seconds later, I was being told to pack my bags. The house was being sold. Everyone clapped. No one asked where I'd go, not even my parents. I'd spent 2 years helping Dad recover from his stroke, keeping the lights on, and saving this home from foreclosure, but they had no idea. Or so I thought, because the truth, the house was never really theirs. 2 years ago, I moved back into my parents' house with a broken heart and a suitcase full of regrets. My divorce had left me emotionally hollow and financially unstable. At 38, I was starting over. Then, just weeks after I arrived, my father had a massive stroke that nearly killed him. While my siblings offered flowers and promises, I stayed. I became the one who bathed him, managed his medication, paid the overdue bills, and kept the lights on. I let go of my career in non-profit administration and any personal aspirations because someone had to show up and no one else did. Tonight, as I walked into the dining room for the anniversary party, the air was thick with the scent of catered Italian food and strained pleasantries. The long mahogany table was set like a magazine spread, crystal glasses, golden napkin rings, and flickering candles. It looked like love, but it didn't feel like it. My mother sat at the head of the table in a navy blue gown, her face stretched into a smile too tight to be sincere. My father looked thinner than ever, but content, nodding quietly as relatives complimented the decor. The whole family was here, cousins I hadn't seen in years, uncles and aunts who barely called. The room buzzed with shallow laughter, clinking glasses, and the hollow sound of forced happiness. Then there was Nathan. My brother arrived late as always, stepping into the room like a celebrity, walking into his own gala. His hair was perfectly styled, his designer suit crisp. Sabrina followed behind him in a glittering red dress, holding their 2 kids like accessories. They made a show of hugging our parents and posing for photos like a magazine family. You'd think they had flown in from Monaco, not just across town. Dinner started with toasts. Aunt Lily praised 40 years of commitment. Cousin Tara shared a memory of my parents dancing in the rain. Then Nathan stood up and tapped his glass. "I've got a little surprise for Mum and Dad," he said, flashing that perfect smile that always meant trouble. Everyone hushed. Nathan looked around the room with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no in his life. "Sabrina and I have been doing some thinking about family, about the future." Sabrina nodded, clasping his hand and beaming. "We think it's time for something bigger," he said, "something that brings us all closer. So we've decided we're buying a new house, a beautiful property out in Green Hollow, great schools, safe neighborhood, lots of space." "Oh, how lovely," my mother exclaimed, clutching her chest. "But that's not all," Nathan continued. "It's got an in-law suite big enough for both of you," he said, gesturing to our parents. Gasps and applause broke out. Everyone began talking at once, praising the thoughtfulness, calling him a saint, joking about who'd get to use the pool first. My father looked genuinely touched. My mother blinked away tears. I sat frozen. Nathan continued, oblivious or indifferent. "It's time Mum and Dad stopped worrying about maintenance and bills. They'll have their own space close to the grandkids and we'll all be together. It's what family's about, right?" Sabrina squeezed his arm proudly. All eyes turned to our parents. My mother nodded, glowing with approval. My father smiled faintly. It was a beautiful moment. If you didn't know what was coming next, Nathan raised his glass again, clearly enjoying the attention. "Now, of course, there's one important detail to address," he said, letting the suspense build. "To make all this happen, we'll be selling this house." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. My mouth went dry. Around me, the family cheered again, as if he'd just donated a kidney or announced world peace. My aunt clapped so hard her bracelet flew off. My cousin whistled. Someone actually said, "Brilliant idea." No one looked at me. My hands trembled under the table. This house wasn't just an address. It was the one place I had left after my life fell apart. It had been my sanctuary, my responsibility, my guilt, and my second chance all rolled into one. And now it was being handed off like a pawn on a chessboard. Wait, my father said, blinking, but this house, we've lived here for over 30 years. That's the beauty of it, Nathan said with a casual shrug. The market's hot. We could easily get over $9,000 for it, maybe even $1 million with a few minor updates. A low murmur of approval rippled through the room. Numbers always impressed them more than memories. But where will we go in the meantime? Mum asked, brows furrowed. That's the best part, Sabrina jumped in. We close on the Green Hollow house next month. It has a guest house ready to move into. You won't need to lift a finger. And it'll be great for the kids, Nathan added. They'll have their grandparents right there, and we'll all be one big, happy family. I finally found my voice. You're selling this house. Nathan turned to me as if noticing I was still in the room. Well, yeah. It's not exactly ideal for aging parents anymore, is it? Stairs, old wiring, you've said yourself it needs a lot of repairs. I said that because I was the one fixing them, I replied, heat rising in my chest. This is my home, Nathan. He chuckled. No, Emily, this is Mom and Dad's home. Or, well, it was, but we're moving forward now. You should too. Where exactly do you expect me to go? I asked, voice tightening. He shrugged again, that same infuriating indifference in his tone. There are plenty of affordable apartments in town. You're an adult. You'll figure it out. Still no one intervened. Still no one said my name. You do realize I've been living here, I said this time, addressing the whole room, taking care of Dad, cooking, cleaning, running errands, paying bills. Nathan cut me off. No one's saying you haven't helped, but this is bigger than you, Em. It's about the whole family. I'm family, I shouted, startling myself. Or did you all forget that? Silence. Uncle Paul reached for his wine. Aunt Lily busied herself straightening a napkin that didn't need fixing. Even my mother avoided my eyes. You'll land on your feet, Sabrina offered, clearly trying to sound sympathetic, but failing. Maybe this is what you need to finally get your life going again. Get my life going, I echoed. Come on, Nathan said, and now his smile was gone. You've been sulking around this place for years. It's time to grow up. You're 40, for God's sake. Most people your age have their own homes, their own families. You're acting like we owe you something. I stood up. I don't want anything from you, but I do deserve a say in what happens to the roof over my head. Nathan rolled his eyes. You're being dramatic. And you're being cruel, I shot back. Then he leaned in, lowering his voice, but making sure everyone heard. Start packing, he said coldly. You don't belong here. I stared at him, waiting for someone, anyone, to step in, to say, that's too far. Or, wait, let's talk about this, but no one did. My mother looked away, my father said nothing. I felt my heart break, not from the betrayal alone, but from the confirmation that I was alone in this room, in this family. I turned and walked out, swallowing my pride like glass. I sat on the front porch, the wooden steps creaking softly beneath me as I lowered myself down. The night had turned cold. Or maybe I was just feeling it more than usual. The echoes of laughter and champagne glasses clinking still drifted through the windows behind me, but I felt like I was on another planet entirely. The same porch where I used to sit with Dad, talking about life, dreams, and someday getting out of this town. Now felt like the edge of a cliff I'd just been shoved off. My fingers were numb, but I pulled out my phone anyway and scrolled until I found the name I hadn't dialed in over a year. Richard Hale. He had been my divorce attorney, sharp, relentless, and compassionate in a quiet way. After the paperwork was finalized, we stayed in touch sporadically. He was the one person who had seen the messy parts of my life and hadn't looked away. I hesitated only for a second, then tapped. Call. He picked up on the second ring. Emily, everything okay? No, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I need your help. It's urgent. Tell me. I need you to pull up property records for 781 Crestwood Lane, I said, glancing at the brass numbers screwed into the porch column beside me. It's my parents' house. Or I thought it was. There was silence on the other end for a moment, followed by the sound of a keyboard clicking. Okay, give me a second. I waited, my mind buzzing. Part of me didn't even know why I'd called. Maybe I just needed someone to witness what was happening. Maybe I needed proof that I wasn't insane, that something was wrong here. All right, Richard said, his voice shifting into the professional register I remembered from the courtroom. So I'm looking at the deed history now. What? I asked, sitting up straighter. This is strange, he murmured. Emily, your parents don't own the house. I blinked. What? He cleared his throat. According to the county records, the property title transferred 18 months ago after a foreclosure proceeding. My breath caught. Foreclosure, yes. It says here that the original owners, Robert and Linda Carter, defaulted on their mortgage payments about 20 months ago. The bank began proceedings and the house was sold at auction to a holding company called Everston Trust LLC. My heart dropped into my stomach. I stood slowly, gripping the porch railing to steady myself. Who owns Everston Trust? That's where it gets even more interesting, Richard said, his voice now cautious. The registered agent on the trust is you. I closed my eyes. I had almost forgotten that I'd set it up under that name. After Dad's stroke, I discovered unopened mail, threatening letters from the bank, notices of default. I confronted him, but he brushed it off, saying he'd talked to the bank. I knew he wouldn't. He was too proud. And when the foreclosure notice arrived, I panicked. I couldn't let them lose the house, not after everything. So I used what I had, the money from my divorce settlement. Tom had left me half of everything, including his stake in the business we'd built together. It wasn't enough to make me rich, but it was enough to outbid the bank at auction. I had quietly created Everston Trust as a holding entity, thinking one day I could quietly transfer the house back when things stabilized. But they never did, and I never told them. Emily, Richard asked gently. I'm here, I said. I didn't think it would matter. I thought I was helping. You were, he said, but now someone's trying to sell a house they don't legally own. I know, I whispered, and they're kicking me out of it. I bought the house, I said finally, the words catching in my throat. I'm Everston Trust. Richard was quiet for a long moment. You bought your parents' house? Yes, I replied, sinking back down onto the porch step. When Dad had the stroke, I found the foreclosure notices. They were drowning in debt, behind on everything. They never told me, probably out of shame. So I fixed it. Emily, that's incredibly generous. But why didn't you just tell them? Because it would have destroyed Dad, I said. He's always been so proud of being the provider, the protector. To admit he'd lost the house would have crushed him. I thought if I bought it quietly, let them keep living here. Maybe one day when things got better, I could give it back. You've been letting them live here for free, Richard asked. For over a year, I paid off the mortgage, took care of the taxes, repairs, everything. I wanted to keep the house in the family, even if it meant no one knew it was mine, and Richard let out a breath, and now your brother is trying to sell it without knowing it doesn't belong to them. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. He stood in that dining room, told me to pack my bags like I was some freeloader, and my parents just let him. I'm so sorry, Emily. I'm not even angry that they didn't know, I said softly. What hurts is how quick they were to side with him. No questions, no concern, just applause. There was a pause. Then Richard said, I can file an immediate cease and desist. Anyone who tries to list or show that house without your consent will be in violation, and I'll send you a complete ownership file, something tangible you can put on the table, literally if you need to. Thank you, I whispered. Do you want me to notify your parents directly? No, not yet, I said. This is my mess to handle. I hung up and sat in silence, the phone resting in my lap. The house loomed behind me, glowing with warm light and false memories. A home I'd saved with the last of my savings, now at the center of a betrayal so sharp it made my chest ache. It was supposed to be a gift, a second chance for all of us. I imagined the day I would surprise them, show them what I had done, and see Dad's eyes light up with pride instead of shame. I pictured Mum hugging me, saying she was proud of me. I dreamed of them knowing finally that I had done something meaningful. But now the truth would come out as a defense, not a gift. I wiped my eyes and stood up. The warmth from the porch light spilled over me, but I felt cold to my bones. I had bought this house out of love, and now I'd have to fight to stay in it. By the time I stepped off the porch and back into the house, the den of conversation hit me like a wave. It was as if my exit had never happened. No one had followed. No one had checked on me. They were too busy making plans for their beautiful new future, one that conveniently erased me. I paused in the foyer, glancing down at my phone. A new message from Richard flashed across the screen. Documents attached. You own it fully. Cease and desist. Letters drafted. I opened the file. Deed records, title history, tax documents, all showing one clear name, Everston Trust LLC, managed by Emily Carter, me. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and walked into the dining room. The long table was still surrounded by the same smiling faces, but now the energy had shifted. They were animated, excited, feeding off each other like they were designing a fairy tale. Sabrina was on her third glass of wine, gesturing wildly with her free hand. So I was thinking we take out the wall between the kitchen and the den, make it an open concept, and maybe install a breakfast nook with those built-in benches. Nathan nodded eagerly. Exactly. Modern, sleek, but still warm. And the backyard, we could extend the deck, add a hot tub, maybe even one of those retractable awnings. Aunt Lily chimed in. You should definitely get a wine cellar. That neighborhood screams entertaining. And a smart security system, added Uncle Paul, ever the practical one. They were designing their dream life and building it on my foundation. I cleared my throat and not a single head turned, so I spoke louder. Before you finish building your dreams, I said, voice steady, let's talk about whose house this is. That got their attention. Silence blanketed the room like a dropped curtain. Every face turned to me, and for a long, loaded second, no one said a word. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Excuse me, I stepped closer to the table, holding up my phone. I just got off the phone with my lawyer, the man who handled my divorce and who now handles real estate law. He pulled the deed for this house. My mother frowned, confused. Why would you do that? Because I had a feeling something wasn't right, I said. And I was correct. You don't own this house. Not anymore. Murmurs uneasy shifting. Nathan scoffed. What are you talking about? Of course they own it. They've lived here forever. Yes, they have, I said. But 18 months ago, the bank foreclosed on the property. The title changed hands, and the current owner is not you, Nathan. It's not Mum, not Dad. I let the moment stretch before finishing. It's me, gasps, audible ones. That's ridiculous, Nathan said, standing up. You're not even working. You don't have that kind of money. I did, I replied. When I divorced Tom, I received a significant settlement, enough to buy this house outright when it went up for auction. My father looked like someone had just knocked the wind out of him. My mother covered her mouth. I used a holding company, Everston Trust, to make the purchase discreetly. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to embarrass you. I knew how hard it would be to admit the house had been lost. I thought I was doing the right thing. You bought the house, my mother repeated softly. You saved it. I saved us, I corrected gently. And tonight, while you were all planning your future without me, I realized that if I hadn't done what I did, none of you would be sitting here. Nathan stared at me, his jaw clenched. So what? Now you're throwing it in our faces. You think this gives you power? No, I said. It gives me facts, and here's one. You can't sell what you don't own. The silence hung so heavy it felt like gravity had doubled. No one spoke. No one moved. The sparkle in the room dimmed, as if the chandelier above had somehow understood the shift and adjusted its glow accordingly. Then Nathan laughed, a low, dismissive chuckle that grew louder until he shook his head and took a step towards me. "You're unbelievable," he said. "You go broke after your divorce, move back in here like some lost puppy, and now you expect us to believe you secretly bought the house. What is this, your little revenge fantasy?" "It's not a fantasy," I said, holding my ground. "It's a legal reality." I opened the email from Richard, pulled up the file, and slid my phone across the table. "Go ahead, read it. That's the property deed, the title transfer, the trust documentation, all filed, all legal. You'll see my name right there, Emily Carter, Managing Trustee of Everstone Trust." Nathan didn't even reach for the phone. He crossed his arms and turned to the others. "She probably forged it." "It's real," I said, voice shaking now, but not from fear. "I kept the house from being lost. I used my divorce settlement, every last dollar of it, because I found out Dad was 3 months away from losing everything." My father's head was bowed, his fingers clenched around the arms of his chair. My mother looked frozen, lips slightly parted, eyes darting between me and Nathan, like she couldn't quite compute what was happening. "I found the foreclosure notice stuffed behind unpaid bills I went on. You never told me. You never told anyone. You just tried to carry it all alone. And I couldn't let that happen, so I acted. You could have said something, Mum." "And crushed Dad," I said. "He could barely handle walking to the mailbox after the stroke. You think he'd survive knowing he'd lost the house he built his life in?" "I would have found a way," Dad said hoarsely, not meeting my eyes. "I know you would have tried," I said gently, "but you were too sick and too proud." Nathan snorted again. "So now what? You think we all owe you? Is this about gratitude? About power?" "It's about respect," I said. "And truth. I let you all believe what you wanted to believe. I let you... ignore me, dismiss me, call me lazy, pathetic. I didn't say a word because I thought I was doing something selfless. But tonight, you made me a villain in my own story." Sabrina broke in, her voice sharp. "Why wait until now to tell us? Why not be honest from the beginning?" "Because I didn't want to humiliate my father in front of his family," I snapped. "Because I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd all see my worth without needing a bank statement to prove it." I looked at my mother again. Her hands trembled in her lap. But what caught me off guard was the way her eyes flicked to Dad, quick, almost imperceptible. As a glance filled with something that looked too much like guilt. That's when it hit me. She knew. Not everything maybe, but something. Enough to be afraid. Enough to stay silent. "Mum," I asked slowly, "did you know?" She didn't answer at first, just stared down at the tablecloth like it had become the most interesting thing in the room. "Did you know the house wasn't in your name anymore?" The glance happened again. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. "Linda," Dad said, almost warningly. The room tensed. "You knew," I said, voice breaking. "You both knew." Still, she said nothing. I felt my chest tighten as tears welled in my eyes. "I gave up everything. My career, my money, my pride. I saved this house, thinking it would bring us back together, that it would be my gift to you." I wiped my face with the back of my hand. But it was never about the house, was it? It was about control. And now that you can't pretend anymore, you'd rather stay silent than stand up for me. A tear slid down Mum's cheek. "I only wanted to help," I whispered, and then I walked away again. Nathan's chair scraped loudly against the hardwood as he stood, his face twisted in disbelief. And something darker. Rage, maybe. "This is manipulation," he snapped. "You've been planning this for months, haven't you? Buying the house behind everyone's back, sitting on your throne of secrecy like some martyr." I didn't flinch. It was never about control. I just wanted to protect the people I love. "By lying to them," he shot back, jabbing a finger in my direction. "By sneaking around with lawyers and paperwork and shell companies. You think that's noble? I think letting my parents live here without the shame of knowing they lost it was the right thing to do." Nathan's laugh was sharp and cold. "Right, because you're always the hero. Poor Emily, abandoned by her husband, crawling home with her tail between her legs. Now she wants to play savior. Sabrina stepped forward, placing a hand gently on Nathan's arm. Her voice was soft, syrupy. Nathan, maybe we should all take a breath. He shook her off. No, she's been manipulating everyone. She let us all believe this was still Mum and Dad's house, and now she wants credit for being the good one. Credit? I asked, incredulous. You think I did this for applause? Sabrina turned towards me, her tone shifting into performative concern. Emily, I know you think you were helping, but honestly, you've always had a way of making things about yourself. This isn't the first time. Excuse me? She clasped her hands in front of her like a prayer. You have a pattern, sweetie. Always the victim, always the misunderstood one. And now you're using this house as a way to control your parents and guilt the rest of us. The words stung, but what hurt more was how easily the others began to nod. Aunt Lily leaned toward Uncle Paul, whispering something behind her hand. Cousin Tara looked away awkwardly. Then a new voice chimed in from across the room, one I hadn't expected. Well, she's not wrong. I turned and saw my younger sister, Julia, step forward. I hadn't seen her all night. She'd arrived late, barely said hello, and had kept to the background until now. Julia, I asked. She didn't look at me. I mean, it's great that you helped them. Really, you can't expect to keep this house all to yourself. It's not fair. Fair, I echoed. I saved this house. I paid for it with my own money. Julia shrugged. Still, it's Mum and Dad's house. It always will be. My chest tightened as I realized I was now completely surrounded. Not just by indifference, but by quiet agreement. Even those who said nothing looked at me like I was the problem, like I had disrupted their perfect narrative. Nathan folded his arms, smirking now. You see, it's not just me. Everyone sees through you. I didn't do this to control anyone, I said again, voice trembling. I did it because no one else would. But you kept it secret, Julia said. You could have told us. I was trying to protect Dad's pride. Nathan rolled his eyes. Or maybe you just liked having the upper hand for once. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The words caught somewhere between heartbreak and disbelief. All I could do was stare at the faces around me, some angry, some smug, some simply blank, and wonder how I'd become the villain in the very story I wrote to save them.
For a moment, the sounds in the room buzzed louder than the accusations. My eyes were locked on Julia's. Her words still echoed in my chest like a slap I hadn't seen coming. But then Dad moved. He cleared his throat quietly at first, then a little louder. He pushed back his chair and stood steadying himself with a hand on the table. I knew, he said. It was soft, but it cut through the tension like a blade. Everyone turned. What did you say? Mom asked, her voice shaky. Dad looked at her, then at me. I knew Emily bought the house. Gasps, then a stunned silence. I figured it out a few months after the stroke, he continued. The letters from the bank stopped. The taxes were paid, repairs were happening, and I saw one envelope from Everstone with a forwarding address. Your old apartment, Em. I didn't say anything because I was ashamed. You what? Mom's voice cracked. You knew and you didn't tell me. I didn't want you to worry, he said gently. We were already drowning in bills. I figured if Emily wanted to help us quietly, I'd let her. I thought maybe one day I'd find a way to pay her back. You kept this from me. Mom's face turned pale. For over a year. I didn't know how to say it, Dad said, his voice breaking. I failed us, Linda. I let this house go. Emily saved it. Sabrina let out a breathless wow under her breath, as if the twist had made her a spectator at a soap opera. Julia looked stunned. Aunt Lily had gone entirely quiet. You knew she owned it, Nathan thundered, stepping forward. And you let us believe it was still yours. You let us make plans. Dad's eyes met his. You never asked. You let me tell her to leave her own house, Nathan yelled, slamming his hand against the table. What kind of father does that? One who is trying to protect all his children, Dad said. Steal. Finally returning to his voice. That's bull, Nathan snapped. You knew she was manipulating us, and you let her. You stood there while we all looked like fools. She wasn't manipulating anyone, Dad said firmly. She was saving us, Nathan's voice rose. So what now? You're just going to let her keep the house, let her kick us all out like she's queen of the damn castle. No one's being kicked out, I said. But you can't sell what you don't own. Nathan's fists clenched. Fine. You know what? If that's how it is, then let's make it clear. Mom, Dad, you need to choose right now. The words dropped like thunder. Everyone tensed. Choose what? Mom whispered. Between me and her, Nathan said. Between the son who's trying to take care of this family, or the daughter who lied to you, manipulated you, and now wants to throw it all in our faces. Aunt Lily gasped. Julia looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. Dad stood silent for a long beat. Then he looked at me. I choose the daughter who saved our home when I was too proud to ask for help, he said, his voice strong, clear. I choose the daughter who spent her divorce settlement to give us a second chance. I choose the daughter we abandoned while she held this family together. My mother began to cry. And if that's not enough for you, Nathan, Dad continued, then maybe you should ask yourself what family really means. Nathan stared at Dad, disbelief washing over his features like a tidal wave. His mouth opened, then closed again, as though trying to find the right words to counter the unexpected blow, but he didn't find any. Instead, he turned to Sabrina, eyes burning. Let's go, he said through clenched teeth. Nathan. Mom's voice cracked, reaching out instinctively. He jerked his arm away. No, you've made your choice. You want her? You can have her. Sabrina hesitated, eyes flitting between the dining room and the foyer. Nathan, maybe we should talk about this somewhere else. Talk about what? That my own father just humiliated me in front of the whole family, he snapped. I stood still, breath shallow, my heart hammering against my ribcage like it was trying to escape. Nathan turned back towards me one last time. I hope this house keeps you warm, Emily, because you've just lost your family. And with that, he stormed out. Sabrina trailed behind, not even looking back. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Silence followed, thick and heavy. No one moved. One by one, the others started finding reasons to leave. Aunt Lily mumbled something about needing to feed her cat. Cousin Tara suddenly remembered a work email she had to send. Even Julia, who had added her share of stabs earlier, walked out quietly with a look of guilt shadowing her face. Within minutes, the room was nearly empty. Only one person stayed behind. Aunt Grace. She approached me as I stood by the corner of the dining table, arms crossed, trembling with leftover adrenaline. Her silver hair shimmered under the chandelier, and when she took my hand, her grip was firm. You're not alone, she said, just loud enough for me to hear. I've known for a while. I blinked.
What? Everston Trust, she added with a faint smile. You used your middle name when you filed it, didn't you? Emily Grace Carter. I do some work at the county clerk's office. Saw the paperwork. My mouth opened slightly, stunned. I didn't say anything, she continued, squeezing my hand, because I knew you'd tell them when you were ready, but just so you know, I've always been proud of you. My throat tightened. Thank you. She gave my hand one last squeeze, then leaned in. Let the rest of them fall apart. You don't need everyone. You just need the ones who see you. And then she walked out, leaving me standing in the emotional debris of what used to be a family. Eventually, I drifted back towards the table. My parents sat on opposite sides, both looking older than they had hours ago. The warmth of the evening had evaporated, and what was left was something brittle, fragile. We didn't speak for a long time. Mum stared at a spot on the tablecloth like it held all the answers. Dad looked at his hands clasped tightly together. The same hands that had built this house, repaired its walls, held me steady when I took my first steps. And now they shook slightly. I sat down slowly, not across from them, but beside them. No lectures, no demands, just three people sitting in the silence they'd created together. Finally, Mum broke it. I didn't know, she said softly, eyes still lowered. I swear to you, Emily, I had no idea. I believe you, I said. She swallowed hard, but I should have known. I should have asked questions. I should have seen what you were doing for us. I didn't reply. Dad spoke next. I wanted to fix it myself. I thought if I could just hang on a little longer, I'd find a way. You don't always have to carry everything, I said quietly. That's what families are for, or at least that's what I thought. His eyes closed for a moment, then opened again, red-rimmed and tired. I was wrong, Emily, about a lot of things, especially you. We fell into silence again, but this time it wasn't the same. It wasn't the silence of denial or bitterness. It was the silence of three people standing at the edge of a broken bridge, trying to decide if they were brave enough to build it back. The silence stretched until the walls themselves seemed to hum with the weight of everything left unsaid. I stared down at the wood grain of the table, tracing it with my fingertip, trying to ground myself in something real. She helped me, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Mum looked up. Who? Aunt Grace? Dad furrowed his brow. What do you mean? I leaned back in the chair, my body finally relaxing now that the worst of the storm had passed. She works part-time at the county clerk's office. She saw the trust paperwork after I filed it. She never said anything, but she knew. Mum blinked slowly, taking it in. She even helped me navigate a few things, I continued quietly. She pointed me to a contact who could expedite the property transfer. She never pried, never judged, just supported me from the shadows. A small gasp escaped Mum's lips. She covered her mouth with her hand as tears began to well in her eyes. All this time, she whispered, you've carried this alone. You saved us, and we made you feel like a burden. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she broke. The tears she'd held back all night finally fell silently at first, then with uncontrollable sobs. She buried her face in her hands and cried like a mother, mourning something she didn't know she'd lost. I was so wrong, she choked out. I thought you were lost. I thought you needed us. But we needed you, God, Emily. We needed you so much. I reached for her hand. I never wanted you to feel ashamed. I just wanted to help. Dad stood and came around the table, placing his hand gently on my shoulder. His voice, though deep and steady, trembled. I should have protected you, but I let people slander my daughter in her own home. I looked up at him, my heart thudding painfully in my chest. He didn't say it as a defense. He said it as a confession. A man admitting not just his mistakes, but the damage those mistakes had caused. I let them say things to you I never should have allowed, he continued, because I didn't want to face the truth myself, that you had done more for us than any of us deserved. Mum squeezed my hand, her cheeks wet with tears. I'm so sorry, Emily. I don't care about the house, the money, or any of it. I just want my daughter back. I took a long breath. Then I stood, stepping back so I could look them both in the eye. I'm done being silent, I said. Done shrinking myself so other people can feel big. From now on, I speak. I defend myself. I stand my ground. They both nodded. Silent, tearful, but listening. For years, I continued, I let guilt and fear dictate everything. I thought if I stayed quiet, I'd be loved more. But all it did was let people erase me. No more, I said. Not in this house, not in this family. Dad nodded. That's the daughter I see now. Mum stood, her arms outstretched, and pulled me into a tight embrace. You didn't just save this house, she whispered. You saved all of us, even if we were too blind to see it. A month passed. The house was quiet again, not in the eerie, tension-filled way it had been before, but in a peaceful way, like the walls were finally allowed to exhale. Autumn had come early that year, bringing with it crisp mornings and the scent of wood smoke drifting in from nearby chimneys. Dad had started walking the backyard again. He'd even repaired the broken step on the porch, something he hadn't touched since the stroke. Mum had taken up baking again, pies mostly, and filled the kitchen with scents that made the house feel like it belonged to a family again. And me, I was slowly rebuilding. I started volunteering part-time at a local women's resource centre, easing back into the world beyond the four walls of this house. I still woke up with a slight knot in my stomach some mornings, still felt the phantom sting of betrayal when I looked at the empty spot Nathan once occupied at the table, but I also felt lighter. I had told my truth. I had survived the aftermath. I was learning to breathe again. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer when I saw his name, Nathan. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the decline button. Every instinct screamed to protect myself, but another part of me, smaller, quieter, urged me to listen. I pressed accept and held the phone to my ear. Emily. His voice was different. No swagger, no arrogance, just a quiet uncertainty that felt alien coming from him. Yes, I said simply. There was a pause then. I wasn't sure you'd pick up. Neither was I. Another pause. I've been thinking, he said, a lot about what happened, about what I said and did. I didn't speak. I let the silence sit, a small boundary that made it clear this wasn't going to be easy. I was wrong, he continued, about everything. Still, I said nothing. I didn't know you saved the house. I didn't know how much you were doing. I had this picture in my head of who you were, and I held on to it because it made me feel better about myself. He sounded tired, smaller, almost human. Every time I felt like I was slipping, I'd point at you and say, "At least I'm not her." And then you turned out to be the one holding the whole family together, and He stopped himself. I'm sorry, Emily. I'm really, really sorry. My throat tightened. I swallowed hard. I appreciate the apology, I said slowly, but I'm not ready to forgive you. He was quiet on the other end. I understand, he said eventually. I didn't expect you to. I wanted you to know I see it now. Everything you did, everything you gave up, and how we treated you. It was unforgivable. It was, I agreed. But I'm still glad you called, I added, surprising even myself. He let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it for weeks. I miss Mom and Dad, he said. The kids do too. They keep asking when they can see their grandparents again. Maybe one day, I said, but not yet. That's fair. There was another long pause. Then he said, Take care, Em, you too. And the line went dead. I stared at the screen for a long time after, not sure how I felt. There wasn't relief, there wasn't closure, but there was space. A crack in the concrete that maybe, just maybe, could grow into something new. 2 days after the phone call, I received an unexpected email. Subject, from Sabrina. Please read. I stared at it for a while before opening it, my gut twisted, bracing for deflection, for more polished defiance, dressed in soft language. But what I read was nothing like that. Emily, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, and I wouldn't blame you if you delete this right away. But I hope you'll read through. I owe you an apology, not just for what I said, but for what I didn't stop Nathan from doing. I let him walk into that party with a plan that was never fair, and I stood by his side when I should have said something. The truth is, I didn't fully understand what was happening. Nathan has been under serious pressure. His business is failing. He hasn't told anyone in the family because pride runs deep in your bloodline, and I didn't push. He saw the house as a solution to keep himself afloat to buy time. It wasn't right, but it was desperation, not malice. That doesn't excuse anything. I just thought you should know. If you're willing, Nathan would like to meet with you alone. No drama, just honesty. With sincerity, Sabrina, I read it 3 times. It didn't erase the pain, but it did shift something. Nathan hadn't just been cruel, and he had been cornered and lashed out in the only direction that felt safe at me. I took a day to think. Then I wrote back, Tell him I'll meet him. 1 hour. Just him. Neutral ground. We met at a quiet coffee shop downtown, the kind with exposed brick walls, indie music playing too softly to identify, and mismatched chairs that forced strangers into conversation. Nathan was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table in the back, nursing a mug of untouched coffee. When he saw me, he stood awkwardly, like he wasn't sure whether to hug me or just nod. I sat across from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "Thank you for coming." I nodded as, "You wanted to talk?" "I did," he said, running a hand through his hair. "And Sabrina told me what she sent. I'm glad she did. I should have said it myself." I folded my arms but said nothing. "I was drowning," he admitted. "The business is falling apart. Investors backed out. Debts piled up. I couldn't breathe. And when I thought about losing everything, I looked at this house and thought, that's the one thing I can control." "You were never entitled to it," I said. "I know that now," he replied. "But back then, I just saw a solution. I didn't care who it hurt." We sat in silence again. This time, it didn't feel quite so sharp. "I have conditions," I said finally. He looked up. "If you want any kind of relationship again with me, with Mom and Dad, you have to apologize properly. No spin, no excuses. I will. You stop using our parents as leverage. No more guilt. No more manipulation. Agreed. And you treat my boundaries and my ownership unit with respect." From now on, he hesitated, then nodded slowly. "You have my word." It wasn't dramatic. There were no tears, no sudden outpouring of sibling love. But when Nathan stood and extended his hand and I took it, it felt like the first time in our lives we were finally meeting on equal ground. He bowed his head slightly, a small gesture, but for Nathan Carter it was monumental. By the time winter gave way to spring, the edges of our family had begun to mend. Not perfectly, not all at once, but slowly, like scar tissue forming where wounds once split too deep. Nathan and Sabrina bought a modest home on the east side of town. It was smaller than they were used to. No pool, no in-law suite, no wine cellar fantasies, but it was theirs, real, paid for, and quiet. He never said it aloud, but I knew it humbled him in the best way. The flashy suits were replaced with rolled-up sleeves and home repairs. He still had a long way to go, but at least now he was walking it with his eyes open. Mum and Dad stayed in the house, the one I saved, the one they once nearly lost. Life returned to a gentler rhythm. Dad got back into his garden, spending early mornings on his knees in the soil, coaxing tomatoes and peas back to life. He seemed stronger, lighter, as if the shame he once carried had been tilled out of him like last season's weeds. Mum started a weekly book club with the neighbours. She filled the house with laughter again, quiet, meaningful laughter. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me while we cooked or folded laundry, eyes glassy with emotion she no longer tried to hide. "You're still my little girl," she told me one night. "But I see now, you grew into someone I should have been proud of a long time ago. As for me, I stopped hiding behind duty and guilt." I finally opened the women's support centre I'd been dreaming about since before the divorce. A cosy space on Main Street next to a bakery with warm lighting and second-hand couches. We offered workshops, legal aid consultations, and most importantly, someone to listen. The first client we helped walked in crying and left with her head held high. That was the moment I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. Every now and then, Nathan would bring his kids over to see Mum and Dad. The first time was awkward, small talk and long silences, but it got better. The children ran through the halls like I once had, laughter echoing off the same walls that had once heard shouts and heartbreak. The house had held it all. Love, betrayal, redemption, and still stood. One morning, I woke to the sound of birds outside my window and the smell of fresh soil wafting in. I stretched, poured coffee, and watched Dad from the kitchen window. He was in the garden, a sun hat on his head, whistling a song from his youth. And I smiled. This house, this family, this life, I had fought for it all. And finally, it was fighting for me too. The sun was just beginning to dip below the trees when Dad and I settled onto the front steps, 2 mugs of tea cradled in our hands. It had become our ritual. Friday evenings on the porch where everything once fell apart and somehow came back together. The garden smelled like lavender and fresh earth. Crickets chirped in the distance, the neighbourhood had grown quieter over the years, but the sounds of home remained the same. "I've been thinking," Dad said, adjusting his seat with a soft grunt, "about the day I almost lost this place, about how you stopped that from happening." I glanced over at him, but said nothing. He didn't need encouragement to speak his truth anymore. "I thought I was supposed to be the one protecting the family," he continued, "that it was my job to make sure we had a roof over our heads, food on the table, dignity in our name. And when I couldn't, I felt like I failed all of you." "You didn't fail us," I said gently. "You just didn't let anyone help." He nodded slowly. "That's the part I regret most. I pushed you away when you were trying to pull us all back in, and when Nathan turned the family against you, I sat there and said nothing. You were scared." "I was ashamed," he corrected, "and wrong." We sat in silence for a while, watching the sky turn pink and gold. Then he turned to me. "You didn't just save this house, Emily. You saved the whole family." I felt the tears sting, but I blinked them back. I didn't think it would matter. I just didn't want to lose it all. "And now look what you've built," he said with pride. "The center, your life, your strength. You didn't need any of us to prove you were successful." That word successful. For so long, I had chased it, defined it by marriage, career, salary, the approval of people who barely knew me. But sitting there beside my father on the steps of the house I once saved in silence, I finally understood. I didn't need recognition. I didn't need applause. I had chosen love over ego, and that was enough. "I have something to tell you," I said. Dad raised an eyebrow. I changed my will. He blinked. "You what?" I smiled. "When I die, hopefully not for a long time, the house won't pass to any one person." He tilted his head. "I've arranged for it to go to the organization I founded. It'll be converted into transitional housing, a place for women like me who've been cast out, broken, trying to find their footing again." Dad stared at me for a long moment, then slowly he smiled. "From a house that almost ruined us to one that might save others." "Exactly," I said. He chuckled a deep, satisfied sound. "Your mother's going to cry. She'll survive," I said, nudging him with my elbow. We sat there a little longer, sipping tea, listening to the world settle in for the night. And for the first time in years, I felt entirely at all.